Hey YouTube, what's going on? Today we're going to look at a comparison between the Wurkkos FC11 and the Wurkkos FC13s, which is the simple mode. Note that the only difference between the 13s and the 13 is that the 13 comes with Android, which is a bit more complex user interface but a lot more capabilities, and also does include auxiliary lights. So again, the FC11 versus the FC13s. And if you're interested in seeing a basic specifications and usually things that I would post on my channel about the FC13s, I actually provided that video for Wurkkos marketing, so you can head over to their channel and watch that video on there. All right, so let's take a look at these two lights. I think that the FC13s most closely compares with the FC11 because they both carry a simple user interface. They carry a eco low, medium, high turbo. You swap between the modes. You have a step down and a ramp mode. So I think that these two compare to each other. So let's take a look at them now. For the emitter choices, let's start with the FC11. You can get two different emitter choices on this. You can get it in 519A or you can get it in LH351D. For the general population, most people tend to go with the LH351D. It is a higher output, good all-around emitter. I do think it's been outclassed by some of the newer emitters that are out right now, but it's still a really good emitter. Now with the 519A, that is a very pretty beam. It's a nice neutral light, but it's high CRI, so that means it's high color rendering index. You can see things better, the actual true color of things. But it does mean that the output is a little bit more limited. So I think for the general population, if you're not too much of an enthusiast, if you just want a light, the LH351D is what most people go with. So that's what we're going to look at in this FC11. Now for the Wurkkos FC13s, we're looking at an XHP 50.2 emitter. Now this is more of a floody style emitter, but it also has some good range on it as well. It's great all around. I really love the XHP 50.2 in EDC type lights. Now also note, a couple things about the FC13s here is, for one, it's got an orange peel reflector. That allows the beam to spread out even further, making it even better for an everyday carry light. But additionally, one thing I love to have on every light is some type of bezel. That way, if I drop my light on its head, I don't want it to just drop I don't want it to drop in a place where the lens will crack very easily. I want a bezel there to help protect it. So with this, as you can see, that lens is actually recessed into the head of the light, allowing this the outer ring here of the head to serve as a bezel. I really like that, and I like the little orange accent they put in here. Now with the LH351D, they actually did put a little bit of orange peel reflector on there as well to help it be a bit more of a good EDC light. However, you'll see that it's just a flat outer ring there. There's no real bezel at all whatsoever on it. Moving on past the emitter, as far as output, on the FC11, we're going to be looking at a max of 1300 lumens on turbo, and that will go for a total beam distance of 144 meters. Now for the FC13s and that XHP 50.2, we're looking at 2500 lumens, and that reaches out to 166 meters. So again, as good as the LH351D is, I think that it's completely outclassed at this point by the XHP 50.2s. Now for size, on the FC11, we're looking at 116.23 millimeters in length. And on the FC13s, we're looking at 113.53 millimeters in length. So we're looking at a little bit of a shorter light on the FC13s. To translate over, if you're in the United States, it's 4.57 inches long on the FC11 and 4.47 inches long on the FC13s. Now, as far as the diameter, 27 millimeters on the FC11, which translates to 1.06 inch. Or on the FC13s, we're looking at 28.95 millimeters, which is 1.14 inch. So the head diameter is a little bit larger, but you're also getting a little bit of a shorter light out of the FC13s. So I would say, as far as size, I'm going to call these two equal. Now on the emitter and output, I'm giving it to the FC13s, of course, but on size, we're just calling that equal. Now for the button, I think this is pretty neat. Both of these come with a battery indicator. but I think this FC13s really has an upgraded button. Not only does that look a lot nicer, it stayed on a little bit longer, but also this button, I'm going to see if I can get it up close here. There we go. This button on the FC13s is just a lot nicer quality. It feels a lot better to click. I think that this is improved in just about every way over the FC11 when it comes to that button right there. So I'm going to give that to the FC13s as well. Now, as far as the grip and the tube on the bodies of the lights here, you'll see that on this FC11, it's this smooth, glossy finish, and it's got these little bits of ribs here to give it this knurling to where you can grab on. It still gives you decent grip, but it is pretty smooth. And one thing I have noticed is that the finish can wear off really easy on this material when it really comes in contact with just about anything. Now with the FC13s, this has not only like a matte finish on it, but it also has all these grooves in with the knurling that really makes it a nice grip, and it just feels higher quality, and I think it also looks higher quality too. I think it's a better looking and feeling light. I like the grip a bit better on the FC13s. And also, one thing I'll show is that on this FC11, you'll see it's kind of rounded on the knurling, but on the FC13s, it's kind of got sharper edges. Now, it's not rough on the hands or anything, but I think it helps you to lock your hands in a bit better. Okay? Now, let's take a look at the clips for the FC11. We've got this one-way clip, and to be honest, this is an old school type clip on here. It does have good enough retention, nothing wrong with it. It's not really deep carry at all. You got a lot of light that still hangs out here, and it's a pretty tiny clip, but overall it does the job somewhat all right. I don't have an issue with it, but as you'll see, I actually put my lanyard on this as well, because to be honest, when it's in my pocket, I think I'd rather just stick it all the way in my pocket and use the lanyard to get it out versus having that much of the light stick out of my pocket. Whereas on this FC13s, it has a two-way clip. So this can actually be clipped to a hat as well, right there. But also, I think it's got just as good as retention on that FC11. Now, that doesn't always translate because there is some one-way clips that are able to get way better retention than what you can get out of a two-way. But for this old school clip right there, I just don't think it quite holds up. I think that this is a much better clip, and I think that this is just upgraded so over that FC11. So I'm going to give the clip the advantage on the FC13s as well. Now moving on, both of these lights take the same battery size. They take an 18650 battery, so equal there, and that's why their size is able to come out so similar. Now on the tail cap, one thing I will note is that this comes with the magnetic tail cap, okay? Now I'm not really sure why Wurkkos did it like this, but this tail cap on the FC13s is not magnetic from the factory. It's just a basic tail cap. But it's the same exact size as the FC11 on the tail cap, so you can use a tail cap off the FC11, or you can purchase separately from Wurkkos for $2 to put that tail cap on the to put that magnetic tail cap on your FC13s. So I mean, I guess they're kind of equal in that regard, but I don't really understand why they didn't just send it with the magnet on the FC13s. So I mean, I guess you can kind of give it to the FC11 on that for coming with it from the factory. Now, on the charging, both of these take USB-C charging. But check this out. You'll see that the flaps are very different here. And one thing that I've noticed with these flaps right here, they're kind of getting outdated at this point, because what happens is when you're using these out in the field or whatever, these can get so easily ripped up like that when you're doing something, and it's kind of irritating. Now, they both do take USB-C, just to clarify, so same exact charging port inside, but this flap, I think, is getting to a point where it's outdated, whereas right here on the FC13s, that doesn't happen, because all it's got is this little sliver that pulls up from the side there, okay? So it's got a much better, more discreet flap on it that doesn't get accidentally ripped open. Now, it's not just the flap that's better on the FC13s. Also note, the FC11 charges itself by USB-C charging, right? The Wurkkos FC13s, it not only gets charged by USB-C, but it also serves as a power bank function, so you can charge your phone or whatever you would want to charge. It also can do USB-C to C. So huge advantage for the FC13s there. I mean, just having it on you in an emergency situation, you're stuck out somewhere and you need to charge your phone, you can add a little bit of power to your phone from your flashlight. So huge advantage to the FC13s as far as the charging goes. Now on the user interfaces, both of these are really, really similar. Like I said, they're both have two groups where it's just stepped and where it's smooth ramping. So I've got them both set up the way I like these two lights, and that as far as that's stepped. So you'll see there, I'm swapping between 4 outputs: eco, low, medium, high, and you can double click for turbo, single click to go back out. The only difference is if you switch to ramped, it's going to go up and down on a smooth ramp, and it won't have these cuts, you know, to a higher level and lower level. It'll just be a smooth ramp up and smooth ramp down. See on the FC13s here, I'm going to hold it down. See, same exact thing. Eco, low, medium, high, double click for turbo, single click to get back out. So basically the same user interface there, okay? But one thing that I do want to note between the user interface on these two lights is that if you watch the speed here, I'm going to hold them down at the same exact time, okay? Now watch how much more quickly the FC11 goes up in output. I mean, it's like 2 or 3 times faster. I like the speed on the ramp better on the FC13s because it's easier to stop on the light output you want, whereas it's easier to miss that on the FC11 because it's going so quickly. So I'm going to give a slight edge here to the FC13s, but other than that speed on the ramp, they're exactly the same as far as the user interface. So as far as price, now the Wurkkos FC11 runs at $29, so it's a really easy to attain light. It's a good budget price. The FC13s, it runs at $40 on Amazon. However, right now it is currently half off on Amazon, so we are looking at $20 for the FC13s. So in my opinion, the FC13s outclasses the FC11 in almost every single way. It's such a significantly better light. It really is so similar to the FC11 to me that it feels like it's just an upgraded version. Like they could have just called this the FC11 version 2 or FC11 Pro or something like that, and that would have been fine with me because it really just feels like they've upgraded on everything about the FC11. So I highly recommend grabbing that FC13s while it's 50% off right now for $20. Now finally, let's cut to beam shots to finish off the video. Okay, so we're now outside with the FC11, and if you hear some speaking in the background, there is a fair going on across the street. That usually goes on to pretty late at night during this season, so if you don't mind just ignoring that. And so we're going to start off with the FC11. Let's see what mode we're in. Okay, so there's our eco mode. So as you can see, really just an indoor mode. Actually, I can kind of touch the pull with it there a little bit, so not too bad. And then we have low, just pretty nice, probably at the absolute most all you would need indoors and for most situations. Medium and high. I'm not gonna lie, it does give a pretty nice beam. I think I have this in 4000K on the FC11, so it's a really clean looking beam. Looks good. And here we have it in turbo. Now I'm trying to reach the back of the yard. It's not quite doing it, but we're getting close. Let's take a look at it on the tree. It's a really good looking light. And again, that's high CRI. Okay. Back to high, and then eco. So let's move over to the FC13s now. Okay. Alright, so there is our eco mode, and as you can see, it's already significantly brighter. Yeah. Much wider beam initially, right from a lower mode. There we have our low mode. And you can see a pretty clean looking beam profile, but a lot more spill, a lot wider. Medium. And there we're lighting up a good portion of the width of the yard. And high. So it's got a really good flood on it, especially with that orange peel. I think it's a really nice looking beam. Let's go into turbo. I'd say we're just barely touching the back of the yard, I think, but not a whole lot more distance than the FC11. And then if we light up the tree here, I think that looks really good. Hopefully you can get a little bit better feel for the lights now, having seen some beam shots. I personally favor that XHP 50.2 and a little bit of a larger head with the orange peel reflector out of the FC13s. Now I will say that a major reason for making this video is because I'm constantly seeing the FC11 still recommended to people looking for their first flashlight or their upgraded flashlight or whatever. If they're going online asking for it, I'm constantly seeing the FC11 mentioned, recommended, whatever. I don't think it's a bad recommendation. I just think that the FC13s really upgrades it in just about every way, and you can get it cheaper right now. So I just want you guys to see that the FC13s is an option, and my personal choice is to go with the FC13s. But let me know how you feel in the comments below. Keep an eye out. We've got some more comparisons and a couple more unboxings coming up within the next couple weeks. Thanks for watching.